Today we are continuing our sermon series on life-changing relationships. We're focusing our attention today on Christian friendships, and there's a lot in the Bible about friendship, and it's clear that God thinks that friendship is very important. Now, you remember that God created us to live in right relationship with God, right relationship with one another, and right relationship with all of creation. So in this series so far, we're halfway through today. This is Hump Day, right? For the middle of 5. So our first sermon 2 weeks ago was based on our relationship with God, how that works. 2 weeks ago, last week rather, we focused on our family relationships and what that looks like and what it can look like. And so today we're going to focus on right relationships with others, our friends, those that we call our friends. And so, matter of fact, Jesus went so far as to call his disciples friends. When you think about that for a minute, you realize that it's possible then for us to be friends with God. We're talking about the one that not only created us, but created every single thing we know, everything in the universe, and understands it all, and yet he wants to be our friend. It's possible for us to be friends with God himself. Matter of fact, Jesus befriended the disciples, and that becomes a model, I think, for us in our Christian friendships today. And so we're going to take a quick look at Jesus talking to his disciples when he gives them his commandment. Watch. What's this?
My commandment is this: love one another, just as I love you. The greatest love you can have for your friends is to give your life for them. And you are my friends, if you do what I command you. I do not call you servants any longer, because servants do not know what their master is doing. Instead, I call you friends, because I have told you everything I heard from my Father. You did not choose me. I chose you, and appointed you to go and bear much fruit, the kind of fruit that endures. And so, the Father will give you whatever you ask of him in my name. This, then, is what I command you. Love one another.
So Jesus became friends with both men and women, and he shared God's love with all of his friends, and they became followers to share God's love with each other. And through his life and his death, Jesus showed us that no one has greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friend. So Jesus is Lord, but he's also our friend. So we have different relations. There's different relationships that we have with God. We see God in different ways. There's sustainer, there's provider, there's father, but there's also friend. So we love God. Seriously, we love God because God loved us first. John Wesley called that prevenient grace, and we use that term often. But we often speak about how we are children of God, and it's important to know that God is our leader and guider, but also we need to understand that God is our friend. God desires to have this relationship or friendship with us. And that's part of the reason why Jesus came to us. Jesus comes to reach out in friendship to you, to know you, and to be known also by you. So it's through this friendship that God shapes us and he forms us to be the kind of people who share Christian friendship with the people in our lives. And so this is what Jesus meant when he said, at the passage there that we just watched, when he said, "This is my commandment, that you love one another, you love each other just as I have loved you. No one has greater love than to give up one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you." So Jesus befriends us and shares God's love with us so that we can share God's love with our friends. We've also been talking about the Martin Buber's idea of the I-it relationship versus the I-thou relationship. So let me do a quick reminder of this and think about this in the terms of friendships today, if you will, okay? Now remember the I-it relationship. I'm the important one. I'm the star in my own movie. You know, I'm the writer, producer, actor, everything. I do all the parts. Everyone else is just coming in and out of scenes. Nobody else is even co-stars. They're just there. They're extras, and my scenes, it's all about me. What are you going to do for me? How are you going to help me? What are you going to do to make me happier in my life? That's the I-it relationship. Now think about that in terms of friendship, but then think about what he called the I-thou, Martin Buber called the I-thou relationship, which is where that you have sacred worth, as do I, but you have that, so you don't exist simply to meet my needs. You exist as a person of great worth. So the I-thou relationship is a dialogue rather than a monologue. It's something where we both share with one another. It's where I'm interested in you rather than you just being there for what you can do for me, but I'm interested in what you're about. I'm interested in seeing how I can minister to you or what I can do for you, not simply what you can do for me. Again, think of this in terms of friendships. See, New Testament Christianity teaches us that we have to have people who will walk through this journey with us. If there's one thing we see in the New Testament is they needed one another to go through this Christianity, this journey. And so that's what we talk about when we talk about our journey together. We're learning and inviting. We want people in this process that we're doing. And we need people that we can trust. We need people who will encourage us, who will bless us, who will hold us accountable to help us grow in our faith. We also need to be those kind, to do those things for the friends that are our friends, right? We need to do that. So Jesus called us to live in an I-thou relationship, not only with God, and not only in our families, but with each other in our relationships, our friendships that we have. So when they asked Jesus to tell them the most important commandment, they were questioning him, they were trying him, and they said, what's the most important commandment? Here's what Jesus said. He said this in Mark chapter 12. He says, the most important one is Israel, listen. Our God is the one Lord, and you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your being, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And before they had time to break in and say, you did good, he continues. He says, the second is like unto this. He goes right in. So it's not just the one, but stands by itself. He puts these two together. He says, the second is this. You will love your neighbor as yourself. No other commandment is greater than these. He stuck these together. So being a friend becomes very, very, very important in our lives. And I think a lot of people misquote Jesus because when I've heard people say that you shall love your neighbor as you love yourself, but I'm not really sure that that's what God said. I don't think Jesus said that in there. That I think what he's saying is that you should love your neighbor as being your own self. In other words, we're in this together. We're apart with one another. And I don't want to take this to so extreme as a weird place, but it's important that we're together. That it's not me and you, but it's us. Because if it's just me by myself and you by yourself, and we decide we're going to get along, it's really, really easy to go to the I-it relationship where you are there basically for my benefit. But if we can pull this in, if we can understand that God made us to be together in this, then it's a lot harder to drop down into that I-it relationship because if it affects you, it affects me because we're together. See the difference? We're all connected. We love our friend because our friend is part of us. And I think that's part of what it means to be an I-thou relationship with our friendship. If you're a note taker, you're going to be in heaven today. You're just going to fill up all the space you can find. And so just get your pencil sharpened up, lick the end of it so it writes good, and let's go. I've got 3 different things I'm going to give you some help with. And I just wanted to throw all these things together because a lot to cover. But there are 3 marks of friendship that actually Paul Waddell gives this in his book called Friendship and the Moral Life. And actually he's quoting St. Thomas Aquinas Waddell's easier to read than Aquinas, so we're going to take it from Waddell's, the way he writes it, okay? So this is what Paul Waddell and Thomas Aquinas gives us. They say the first mark of friendship is benevolence, okay? The first mark of friendship is benevolence. Now, benevolence is not only wishing our friends well, but it's actively working for their well-being, supporting their interest, seeking their good. We love them for their own sake, and friendship is the activity in which each person is working to help the other person. That's what we do when we're being friends with one another, okay? The second mark of a friendship, according to Aquinas and Waddell, is this. Is a mutual or reciprocal love, a love in which each person knows the well-wishing one person offers to another, that is returned. In other words, it's not just me wishing you well, me doing things for you, but it's this relationship back and forth. Have any of you ever noticed that friendship cannot be one-sided? Have you noticed that? You ever tried to be friends with somebody and they didn't return that, and you just, you get mad or go crazy or something, or what you do is you end up just giving up and finding someone else to be a friend with, right? Or maybe others have tried to do that with you and you've kind of sloughed them off, right? That happens. Now, I-it relationships don't work well in friendships. Friendships mean that we live our lives together. We share our lives with each other. In fact, our friendships change us and help us grow because it's in our friendships that we feel accepted and loved. It's that friend that you can say the things to that you couldn't say to anyone else, and they will work through the process with you. It's knowing that acceptance and that care that you give the other person, that's reciprocal and that's coming back to you. That's the second mark. The third mark of friendship is that the love of our friends helps us grow and become the person that God is shaping us to be. It's going to help us grow and shape us and who God is, or shape us to who God wants us to be. Aristotle once put it similar. He said something like this. He said, when we look at our friends, it's like a mirror to us. We can see ourselves in them because we too have been formed, shaped, and defined by the same love that we share. Friends play an important part in our faith journey, right? So, matter of fact, a survey was done a few years back. It was done that compared people who had close friends in the church they attended versus people who did not have a good friend in their church. And they found that three things resulted from having a close friend in your church. Three things that happen. First is you're more likely to attend worship if you have a close friend in your church. Okay? Only 52% of the people who did not have a close friend in their church said that they attended worship every weekend. Well, 80% of the people who had a close friend in the church were in worship every weekend. That's a huge difference, about 30%. Good friends make plans to see each other in church. That's what happens when we have friends in church. We come, we want to see them. Matter of fact, Paul was talking to the church in Jerusalem, and so the book is called Hebrews, and he says this in Hebrews chapter 10. He said, let's hold on to the confession of our hope without wavering, because the one who made the promises is reliable. Let us consider each other for the purpose of sparking love and good deeds. Don't stop meeting together with other believers, which some people have gotten into the habit of doing. Instead, encourage each other, especially as you see the day drawing near. One of the biggest reasons why people become active in a church is because their friends in a church encourage them. A big part of it. I want to invite you to encourage your friends in their faith journey. That's part of what friends do. Our friendship doesn't happen here and our faith happen here. They mingle. They are together. So think about some friends that you've not seen in church for a while, and maybe call them, check on them, see how they're doing. Invite them to come to your small group if they've not been a part of a small group. Maybe sit with you in worship. Maybe where you sit pretty crowded, you're willing to move to a different part of the sanctuary to sit so that you have room to sit with some friends that you've invited. Let me invite you to do that. Offer them some encouragement. Let them know how much you really care about them. And don't just stop with those in church, but how about our unchurched friends? Pray for those friends. Make an intentional effort to invite them to church on Sunday. Now remember, part of our relationship with God, while God is our friend, also Jesus came in a saving relationship. This relationship begins because we have been saved from evil. And so God is there, Jesus is there to save us, and our friends need that as we do. So the third thing that did I do two? I'm the second one, okay? The second thing the survey found was that the people who had a close friend in church felt a greater sense of belonging in their church than those who did not have a close friend in the church. It felt more like they belonged. See, when a new person comes to church, we want to help them move from being somebody that nobody knows to being one of us, or us being with them. And so, again, small groups is an awesome way to do that. You know I was going to say something about small groups. 90% of the Sundays we do that? So small groups are an important part of this process. When you start attending a small group, people get to know you. You get to know other people. You start building these relationships, and it's the friendship that makes us feel like we belong often in church. The third thing that the survey revealed is this. The survey revealed that those who had a close friend in church felt like they received better care. Felt like they received better care than those who did not have a close friend in the church. Now, in this survey, they said that the pastoral care was about the same. That people received about the same level of pastoral care was being offered to all these people. But the thing that we have to realize is that caring for the body of Christ, caring for individuals, is not just a pastoral thing. It's what we do as people. It's going the extra mile. It's stepping out to do something because, simply, they need it. Okay? So we have to realize that caring for people in the body of Christ isn't just a responsibility of pastors, but that's what friends do for each other. You minister to one another in the body of Christ. So overall, people with a close friend in church express a deeper spirituality rather than those without close friends in the church. And so there's this important connection between God and friendship in the church. And so they come together well there. And Christians bring their friends to Jesus, right? Matthew, Mark, and Luke, all three of these Gospels tell the story. They tell the same story about four friends who brought their paralyzed friend to Jesus, okay? They were good friends. Now, Mark actually tells us that it was Jesus' house that they were at. And Mark also tells us in his Gospel that there were so many gathered around in the house and around the house that there was no longer room for them again. Even standing up, let alone a guy on a stretcher, right? And so they couldn't even get in the front door. So the four men came carrying their paralyzed friend on this bed or a cot, whatever it be, a stretcher, and they're trying to bring him in, laying before in front of Jesus, and there's just no way they can get through the crowd. And I suppose they could have got frustrated and took him back home, just given up, or maybe laid him outside the door and say, well, if Jesus ever comes by, touch his gown there and you'll be fine. But that's not what friends do. They were determined to bring their friend to Jesus. They weren't going to be denied. And so they took him up on the roof of the house. Now, during this time, remember, Jesus is in his family room. The house is had like one big room, and then there might be a little sleeping quarter, but basically it was one big room. And Jesus in there, the place is jam-packed. He's teaching the people. He's healing people in this family room, I guess you could call it. And there begins to be some dust filtering down through the roof, or down by them. You could see that come down, then little pieces of ceiling start falling down, and then the roof starts falling down around them. They're holding this, and they look up, and they see some sunlight burst through. And then when they look up, they can see blue sky because they're tearing the roof off of the house. Okay? They're tearing the roof off the house. These paralyzed man's friends were ripping the roof off the house. Now, Can you sense the determination of these friends to get their friend to Jesus any way they could do it? Now, Jesus looked up, and I picture him a little amused. What are you doing? You know, it may rain again next year sometime, and I need a roof, right? It doesn't rain much there, I think. So they tied a rope to their friend's bed, and above this hole, they lower this bed, this cot, they lower it down to Jesus. Jesus is so impressed. Jesus is not impressed with the disabilities of this man. Jesus is so impressed with the faith of the man's friends. Now, what is Jesus impressed with? The faith of the man's friends. That he said, friend, he calls him friend. He says, friend, your sins are forgiven you. He forgave the man. He offered grace. He offered forgiveness. He offered him healing. Now, I'm not sure how the man got up and walked if there was no room to walk. I'm not sure how that happened. But he could move and he could do what he needed to do. You see, friends are stretcher bearers for each other. A real friend is someone who can help you and will help you in the hardest times. That friend will pray for you. That friend will listen to you. That friend will spend time with you, will minister to you. When you minister to a friend, you open the door of faith to Jesus. That's how some of our friends get to know who Jesus is by the way we befriend them. In fact, some of your friends will come to faith simply because of the way you treat them. They will see God's love shining through you, and they will want what you have. Ecclesiastes, in the wisdom literature in the Old Testament, Ecclesiastes says this: 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return on their hard work. If either should fall, one can pick up the other. But how miserable are those who fall if they don't have a companion to help them up. Also, if 2 lie down together, they can keep each other warm, or they can stay warm. But how can someone stay warm alone? Also, 1 can be overpowered, but 2 can put up resistance. And then he finishes with this: a 3-ply cord doesn't easily snap. And let me suggest that for us, it's us, our friends, and Jesus. That's the 3-ply cord. Because if you and your friends are bound together with Jesus, there's a cord that can't easily be broken. Because good friends will stay with you. Jesus will stay with you. Friendships that are based on faith in Jesus are the kind of friendships that will put you and get you through so many things. They will sustain you. So I want to finish with some ideas that just come up with, I've thought about friendships. How do we cultivate friendships? How do we nurture authentic friendships that will help us? And so I want to just share a few keys, I think, in maintaining authentic friendships. I think the first key to make a friendship, rather is to make friendship a priority and dedicate time with your friends. Okay, now if you have children at home, it's probably a struggle to find time just to breathe. I remember hearing from women who have more than one child at the house. Sometimes you just can't even go to the bathroom by yourself. There's just so many things that you don't have time. So where do you find the time for friends? But it's important enough to have friends that you need to make time, and you need to set that priority up. Now, it doesn't take it doesn't take 6 days a week to have a friend, okay? So we know that we need to spend time nurturing our friendships. And I've read that if you'll schedule about 4 hours a week for your friendships, you can maintain healthy friendships. So I would say between 1 and 2 hours of that probably will happen with your small groups, the people you're building relationship and your faith as we work through those here. And you need another 1 to 2 or 2 3 hours, whatever's left of that 4 hours, to connect with friends by hanging out, talking on the phone, actively doing something together. Because here's the thing, we grow closer to our friends by sharing meaningful experiences and by conversations, finding out what's going on in their lives, and them finding out what's going on in ours. The second key to cultivating and maintaining authentic friendships is to bless your friends on a regular basis. Just to bless them. Be a good listener. Because sometimes the best thing you can do is listen. Now, I know sometimes a lot of us are fixers, right? And we listen, we want to fix everything, and sometimes we can't fix it. Sometimes we just need to listen. And sometimes it's exactly what a friend needs, is not a fixer, just a listener. And so go do something with your friend. Do something that your friend wants to do. Do something that, it doesn't have to be about you. We've talked about that. Do something your friend wants to do. It may not be your favorite thing, and at the time it may feel like, oh my gosh, I could be doing laundry or I could be mowing the grass or whatever, but do what your friend wants to do. This is one of the ways that we value people simply for who they are rather than what they can do for us. Okay? So cultivate them. We need to bless our friends. And this is the last thing. The third key to cultivating and maintaining authentic friendships is to extend grace and forgiveness to them. Here's the thing. I promise you that every single friend you have is imperfect. And the reason I can tell you that is because I'm looking around and I'm guessing every one of us is imperfect. And so, we're going to have disagreements with our friends. That happens when you have close relationship. You're going to have disagreements. Our friends will do the wrong thing or say the wrong thing. And sometimes it's not so much about what our friend says. It may be more about where we are at the time. I had a conversation with a woman in a church, and she came up and she told me, I am through with this friendship. And I said, with some other lady, and I said, what's going on? And she told me what they said, and I kind of don't want to say this, but almost kind of laughed because it was kind of childish. And I said, well, what was wrong with that? Well, then she told me where she was at emotionally with some things that had happened to her earlier that day, and then it kind of made sense, but it was more about where she was at than what her friend had actually said. You catch the difference there? And so, our friends are going to say some things. They're going to irritate us. They're going to disappoint us. Even Jesus' friends let him down, right? I mean, think about the 12 that he put the most time and effort into, his 12 closest friends, of his closest friends. During the last 24 hours, one of the friends was one that turned him over to the people that would murder him. Another one that would consider Jesus to be his best friend, he actually said, hey, I don't know that guy. I don't know anything about him. He totally denied him 3 times before it even got breakfast time in the morning, it says. And the rest of them all just abandoned him. They deserted him. But then what happens after the resurrection? Jesus offers his friends, he doesn't offer them hell. He doesn't offer them, I'm Xing you because you messed up, because you weren't a good friend. He didn't turn away from them. He offered them grace. He offered them forgiveness. And let me suggest that that's what we need to do with our friends. They're going to mess up just like you're going to mess up. And just like you need grace and forgiveness, they need that as well. And so the only way to sustain our friendships is to continually offer grace and forgiveness to our friends. Continually. So I'm guessing that today there's someone in your life that you need to apologize to, probably. And I'm guessing also there's somebody that could apologize to you. But today I hope you will pray for those persons in your life and seek an opportunity to offer your friend grace and forgiveness. Because we can only sustain friendships when there's this ample amount of grace. Friendships can change our lives. They're wonderful. They're the best things in the world. And so today I invite you to be a faithful friend to the people in your life.